Some hours pass and two metal scrappers try to look for a ship, but instead they find the giant Gypsy Danger in utter shambles.
Oh my god.
It walks and tumbles down. Then Raleigh comes out badly wounded. The two spectators rush to get help. In a meeting 5 years later, some bigwigs wearing suits state that the Kaijus are adapting and Jaegers are being dismantled left and right. They're slowly being overrun, and they proclaim the Jaegers to be obsolete. So, their plan is to ditch Jaegers and instead make a big wall protecting cities. Bro, didn't they read Attack on Titan? Oh well. Pentecost is disappointed, but he says they don't need him.
We don't need him.
In Alaska, Raleigh's seen washed up on his career, working at the big wall Maria just to have some food for scraps. During his break, he sees the news and it looks like the Aussies have it rough with their wall already being torn down by a Kaiju. Telling you man, read Attack on Titan. Thank God a retired Jaeger, Striker Eureka, took down the beast before it could do more damage. The Jaeger was seen giving the Kaiju a 1-2 before blasting it with Milker missiles. One of its pilots, Chuck Hansen, says that Jaegers got decommissioned because of mid-pilots, and that Kaiju was their 10th one to maul. A helicopter suddenly comes down and it's Pentecost. He's here to talk to Raleigh to get him to pilot again because all his other pilots are wiped out again. The guy that got ripped out of Gypsy Danger? Apparently that was Raleigh's brother, and he's still traumatized from that one, Chief.
Can I have a word?
Pentecost rips out the world-ending speech, so Raleigh chooses to get maimed inside of a Jaeger than a crummy factory instead. Good choice. Arriving at Hong Kong's Shatterdome Jaeger station, it's a busy sight for all. The helicopter lands and out comes Pentecost and Raleigh. They're greeted by Mako Mori, one of the smartest around. Apparently she and Raleigh get acquainted in Japanese. Then they go to the elevator, where they're met by research team's own Dr. Newton Geisler and Dr. Herman Gottlieb. They're a bit socially awkward. Then Newton brags his Kaiju tats. Mako, Pentecost, and Raleigh get out to see the Shatterdome, a hangar for Jaegers. Things have gotten bad, to the point that there's only 4 Jaegers left.
We only have 4 Jaegers left.
Crimson Typhoon, a Chinese Jaeger piloted by the Wee triplets. Next is Cherno Alpha, a Russian heavy Jaeger that's the oldest in the flock, piloted by siblings Sasha and Alexis Kadanovsky. You remember Chuck and his father Hercules Hansen? They both pilot Striker Eureka. Hercules gives out his condolences to Raleigh.
Sorry about your brother.
Then Pentecost explains their ultimate goal: to strap a ton of Russian nukes to Striker's back and blow the breach, the portal where the Kaijus keep coming through. Raleigh's not convinced by this though.
I've got a plan.
Following Pentecost to the research team, Dr. Herman suggests through calculations that Kaijus keep attacking in increasing intervals. So in 7 days, they'll all be swarmed. On the bright side, when the Kaijus do increase in numbers, that's when the breach will stabilize, and then they could throw a nuke at it to close it. Dr. Newton interrupts by saying that the Kaijus might look all unique and different, but they might not be so different after all. Some of the samples Newton has have the same exact DNAs. This means they're clones.
They're clones.
And Newton suggests to neurally drift with a Kaiju's brain to know what the breach is like. So Pentecost wants Herman's findings instead. Newton doesn't give up, however. Now, somewhere else in the Shatterdome, Mako takes Raleigh to Gypsy Danger.
Gypsy Danger.
And she's better than new because they rigged a double-core nuclear reactor to her. Tendo Choi, Raleigh's old control room buddy, surprises him with some of Gypsy Danger's new specs. Despite being the head of the Jaeger restoration, Mako actually wanted to be a Jaeger pilot, to the point that she even studied Raleigh's combat pattern and says he's too unpredictable for the mission.
You're unpredictable.
Raleigh admits he did make some regrets out of the things that he has done. And later, Mako meets with Pentecost and expresses that she should be the co-pilot of Gypsy Danger. Too bad Pentecost rejects Mako's vengeance-driven aspirations. Now lunch is served, and Raleigh gets to sit on the cool Aussie kids table. Herc introduces his son Chuck, who we already knew from the news. Chuck's a bit of a jerk, so he pulls a full Dante Nero, calling Raleigh deadweight to the Jaeger program.
I was in construction.
He flocks off. Then Herc apologizes for his son's bratty behavior. Lunch is over, so it's combat training time. Raleigh demolishes everyone, but he notices Mako's eyes rolling, so he challenges her to a spar. Pentecost refuses at first, but Raleigh can't keep his mouth shut, so he allows Mako to wipe the floor with him. Strikes and grapples galore. Mori actually wins. Raleigh wants her to be his next co-pilot, but Pentecost says otherwise. In 2 hours, he'll find out his real co-pilot. Later, Raleigh approaches Mako to try and convince her to fight for the position of co-pilot, but she just utterly accepts Pentecost's decision.
We are drift compatible.
And speaking of Pentecost, in the elevator he's riding in, he gets a bit of a nose drippy, so he uses some meds for it. Then we're taken to the news in Raleigh's room where the Kaijus are really going crazy and tearing cities up. Somewhere else, Dr. Newton couldn't accept defeat, so he jury-rigged together a Kaiju drift machine. Despite the risky move, he punches it, and he successfully drifts with the Kaiju. He sees some glimpses into the Kaiju's world, but the machine powers down, and Dr. Herman tries to snap him out of it. Meanwhile, Pentecost visits Mako's room to approve that she's gonna be Raleigh's new co-pilot. Raleigh's surprised about this, and the neural handshake begins.
Prepare for no handshake.
So he gives her some tips to remain calm on her memories. They neurally synchronize, and it's a success. Speaking of neural drifts, Dr. Herman busts into the room to drag Pentecost away because Dr. Newton drifted with a Kaiju brain. He's rattled, but he takes his time to say that Kaijus might not be so barbaric because they're systematically attacking Earth under orders.
I think they're attacking us under orders.
All of the Kaijus that have attacked are truly grown and cloned. Shocked, Pentecost asks Newton to drift again, maybe this time with a new Kaiju brain. Gypsy Danger does a few stretches, then Pentecost reveals Hannibal Chow, a Kaiju remains collector running the Kaiju black market in Asia.
Need to access a Kaiju brain.
Pentecost sends the two doctors to go after him for a new Kaiju brain. Gypsy Danger's statistics are going great until Raleigh remembers his brother being toast. The two pilots both go out of alignment.
Both out of alignment.
But Mako is beginning to get stuck in her memories. This makes her stuck to her memory of tearfully trying to find her parents in a Kaiju war zone. This giant thing's chasing after her as a little girl, which must have been totally mortifying. Raleigh goes to her memories and tries to convince her otherwise, but she's totally shocked and unconsciously readies Gypsy Danger's plasma cannon. Tendo tries to stop it with the failsafe, but he fails.
Marco!
So he evacuates everyone. Chuck and Herc help Tendo to disconnect the power line so she won't fire, and the Gypsy Danger's weapon system disengages. Then Raleigh releases her. Somewhere in the bone slums of Hong Kong, Dr. Newton tries to find the Kaiju black market, so he's led to a Chinese medicine shop. The shopkeeper's been peddling some Kaiju bone powder to probably powder Newton's own bone. He rejects and looks for Hannibal Chow instead. He's led to a basement, and it's every Kaiju groupie's dream.
Oh my god!
A room full of Kaiju body parts in pristine condition. Then he meets the infamous Hannibal Chow. Back at base, Chuck loudly argues with Herc and Pentecost about how Mako almost melted a hole through the base. Chuck comes out of the meeting to call Mako a female dog, so Raleigh surges his rage and shoots some fist through a face. Can't even land a punch, and Chuck gets restrained by his father, while Pentecost calls Raleigh into his office, like a good daddy.
It was my mistake.
Pentecost grounds Mako until she learns what she did wrong. Mako dismisses herself, and Pentecost says she's too erratic for her memories. Raleigh tells him what he saw in her, which he recalls when little Mako was personally rescued by Pentecost during that Crab Kaiju siege. Raleigh tries to tug on Pentecost's heartstrings, but he makes it apparent he doesn't want it to be tugged on. Next day at lunch, everyone's quiet after seeing Raleigh, and he meets up with Mako for a little lunch date. That results in him apologizing, since first drifts are rough. Thanks to their deep drift, Mako saw the traumatic event of Yancey Beckett being game-ended. In the control room, GLaDOS senses a new Kaiju emerging from the breach, so everyone to their battle stations. The Crimson Typhoon and the Cherno Alpha teams are gonna frontline the harbor while the Striker team guards it, and Gypsy Danger's team are to stay put. The Jaegers roll out and are airlifted to the coastlines. Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon reach their positions and are on the ready. Back to the bone slums, Hannibal takes a crack at the worshippers of the Kaijus while Dr. Newton requests for a new Kaiju brain, specifically a Kaiju secondary brain since the primary brains rot so quickly.
I'm talking about the secondary brain.
Hannibal wants to know what he needs it for, and it's classified. Nah, wait, Newton's such a snitch. He tells him he's gonna drift with a Kaiju, since he thinks they all have a hive mind collective. Hannibal sees he's already done it anyways. Back to the Reds. Typhoon gets swept away by Otachi. They get up and do the thundercloud formation, in which they use 3 buzzsaws. Otachi gets sliced a bit like sushi, but he absorbs half the blows. It lifts Typhoon up, but they counter-grapple it and throw him into Cherno Alpha's elbow drop. Too bad they get dropped suddenly. Striker wants to move in, as Typhoon gets beheaded. Alpha charges, but Otachi spits acid on their hull. Striker comes in for the assist, but then Leatherback and Otachi gang up on Alpha. Striker comes for Otachi, but Leatherback Leatherback ultimately decimates Cherno Alpha, so R.I.P. Stryker manages to hold his own up until Leatherback blasts an EMP from its back. All of the Jaegers are digital, so they get dropped. That's until Rally pushes for Gypsy Danger since it's analog nuclear.
Gypsy's analog.
Two Kaijus are now headed for the city, and Hannibal doesn't like that Dr. Newton basically gave the enemy information thanks to his little drift, so he's being kicked out of the shop. Otachi makes landfall onto Hong Kong, and Dr. Newton is on the run from him. Out in the sea, Leatherback keeps guard of the deactivated Striker Eureka, so the father and son duo try to do something really stupid, shoot a flare gun into Leatherback's eyes. Just as he was about to ground pound the two ants, here comes a daredevil. It's Gypsy Danger. It removes Leatherback's EMP organ.
Kick his ass!
But he throws Gypsy off, and now we have the two giants facing off and charging at each other. Gypsy pummels Leatherback, but it fights back. Soon the two giants throw debris at each other until Leatherback charges once again. Gypsy then unloads a barrage of plasma onto Leatherback and turns him into Kaiju Swiss cheese. To make sure it's over, they check for a pulse.
Let's check for a pulse.
So he starts blasting. No pulse. Game over for Leatherback. Back at the Kaiju bunker. Dr. Newton thinks it's a buffet line and that Otachi knows he's inside. That's true because Otachi breaks in to try and dig him out. Even sniffs him out with his bioluminescent tongue. Too bad the boss music starts playing, and it's round two. Gypsy whacks Otachi's face with an oil tanker a few times before being thrown off. Otachi runs and hides through the urban jungle. It takes Gypsy by surprise via ambush and beats the stuff out of him. It tries to spit acid on it, but it misses, so it tries to take its head off. Gypsy releases some armpit coolant and freezes Itachi's tail off, so they rip out its tongue. That's when Itachi begins its last resort by clawing on Gypsy, spreading its wings, and barbarically scrapes and flies Gypsy away to the highest altitude. Gypsy has one last trick up its sleeve, or rather, its wrist, the chain sword. Just like a pizza cutter, Otachi just turned into a Papa John's Super Papa. Of course, this makes Gypsy fall out of the sky and experience re-entry burnout. Amazingly, it sticks the landing and the crowd goes wild. Already after the fight, Hannibal's planning to take the scraps, but Newton shows up to collect his Kaiju brain.
You owe me a Kaiju brain.
Back at the base, the two Gypsy Danger heroes are celebrated, even earning the respect of the two Hansons. Pentecost congratulates them, but there's no time to celebrate and no time to grieve. Pentecost has a little leak again, but he just orders to reset the war clock.
Reset the clock.
Hannibal's men are already scavenging for parts, including the secondary brain. Too bad it's too damaged to be harvested. But then they hear a second heartbeat. It's pregnant.
It's pregnant.
Let the screams begin because a baby Otachi is on the rampage. It goes after Newton, but it uses its own umbilical cord as a noose unwillingly. Hannibal scoffs, but he's turned into baby food immediately. It roars one last time, and then it bites the dust. Back at the base, Rally finds out Pentecost got radiation sickness from all the Kaiju fights he's been in. One more, and it's the stairway to heaven for him. Suddenly, two Kaijus are already detected. Hurt can't pilot Stryker, but Gypsy is ordered to go. Dr. Newton sets up his drift machine. Then Dr. Herman offers to drift with him. The base is already busy for the incoming attack. Then Tendo gets approached by Chuck. He complains that no one's gonna pilot with him since his dad's arm is hurt. By the gods, there's your wish granted. Pentecost suited up. Mako's obviously concerned, but you can't do anything to stop the old man. Pentecost brings in everyone for one last glorious speech for Valhalla. Chuck is concerned how he and Pentecost will drift, but he's figured him out as an egotistical jerk with daddy issues, which is too easy for Pentecost to figure out, and Chuck agrees that they'll drift just fine. Chuck says what could be his final goodbye to his father. Rally and Mako prepare and load up on Gypsy Danger, where it and Stryker Eureka are airlifted into the breach's location, and Stryker has a nuke ready on its back. Back in Hong Kong, the two doctors count down to their neural handshake, and they both have their mojo shaken up. They see a glimpse of what Kaijus are planning, and they have to warn the others. The Jaegers are dropped into the trench, so they walk underwater to the target location. They're nearly at the breach, but then the Kaijus suddenly stop. The two doctors quickly surge in the comms, saying that the breach eliminates anything in it that isn't Kaiju, so throwing a nuke inside it won't work. Now they have to ride a Kaiju into the breach to successfully blow the nuke in it. Suddenly, a third Kaiju appears, and it's the biggest thus far.
Category 5.
Slap on Godzilla's boss music for Slattern, the biggest Kaiju enemy in this movie. Out from the shadows to bite Gypsy is Scunner. For the final Kaiju, Reiju bites off one of Gypsy Danger's arms. Good thing he has another one, which he uses it to stab Scunner straight into the skull. Too bad he's still alive after that. Reiju circling back, but Gypsy's standing strong. and its chainsword bisects Reiju clean off the alive list of Kaijus. Slattern suddenly charges Stryker, but the crew uses Stryker's double blades to massively cripple it. Slattern lets out a massive cry for help as Scunner and Slattern prepare to destroy Stryker. Gypsy gets wind of this and offers to help, but Pentecost insists that they stay back and finish it in the breach, since Gypsy is a walking nuclear reactor.
Take her to the breach!
Both Pentecost and Chuck say their farewells as they arm the nuke. The two Kaijus charge Stryker, but the two sons of guns gloriously blow the nuke. The explosion was intense. The shockwave literally clears the water for a few seconds. Gypsy Danger is left crippled with its fuel leaking. They drag the Kaiju carcass and head for the breach, but Slattern is still alive. This is not an obstruction, but a gateway thanks to Gypsy boosting and then stabbing Slattern, then dragging them both into the breach. Slattern violently struggles, but Gypsy lets out his chest-mounted unibeam, finally ending the hammer-headed beast. Soon, both of them get through the breach portal and warp. Mako's oxygen is low, so Rally gives his. He soon ejects Mako in an escape pod. Then he tries to start the reactor meltdown, but there's an error, so he has to do it manually. He goes to the inner mechanisms and activates the meltdown, but Gypsy Danger is danger close to the Kaiju's dimension. There, the aliens see Gypsy fall, while Rally ejects. Gypsy does a full end of Evangelion, and then it blows, collapsing the breach. Herc shouts to everyone to get to the choppers, as out on sea, Mako's pod surfaces. Sadly, no sign of Rally, until his pod surfaces. Mako can't get a pulse on him and she breaks into tears. That's also until he says he's being squeezed too tight.
You're squeezing me too tight.
The crowd goes wild because the breach is finally sealed. The Gypsy Danger pilots are rescued by choppers, and that wraps— oh, no wait, Hannibal in the after credits actually survives the Kaiju swallowing, so now that wraps it up for Pacific Rim. Thanks for chilling with us on this crazy massive movie. What'd you think about it? Why don't you let us know in those comments below using the hashtag #CinemaRecap. This was Pacific Rim by Legendary Pictures, starring Idris Elba, Charlie Hunnam, and Rinko Kikuchi. Until that next Kaiju breach, see you later.